Welcome, everyone, to the June 27, 2012 PDC Board of Commissioners meeting. Gina, please call the roll.
Chair Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Dixon.
Here.
Commissioner Mollis. Absent. Commissioner Strauss. Absent. Commissioner Wilhoit.
Here. Thank you. And Commissioner Mollis will actually be joining us by telephone after the TSCC meeting to help us through the action items and discussion and final approval of the budget. Commission reports. I actually had two kind of interesting opportunities in the last couple of weeks. I helped made a presentation to a Chinese delegation that was very interested in the North Macadam district. 35 people, about 15 mayors from around China. It was kind of a humbling experience when I found that the smallest of the 15 cities was 5 million. Lots of very interesting questions, and kind of brought to mind the difference in culture. One of the mayors came up and through the interpreter said, I understand that your real job is in the development and real estate business. And I said, yes, it is. And he said, well, is that a privately owned company or is it owned by the state? A little different. And then I thought, oh, that's right. He's not elected. That's right. Yeah. He's appointed. And the other question that he had was whether the tram was built for tourism or did it really have a real need? Was there a business use for it? It was a lot of fun. And then I had an opportunity to join Tom Hughes and Harold Paulin and present to the editorial board the Metro's RFP for the Convention Center Hotel, which, by the way, responses are due on July 11th for. So that kept me busy. How about you, Charles?
I don't have anything specific to report.
You've been working too hard.
Been hanging out.
You've been working too hard. Aneshka?
Evelyn? I will report that I was able to attend the FBI grand opening event. That was June 15th. And we were just really fortunate. It was outdoors, and it was one of those really beautiful Oregon days. So we got to enjoy the sun out there. But it was a well-attended event and such a pivotal project that took place during that time period. It was one of the only large projects that was under construction in 2009, and it's a really impressive building. So I was very glad to be a part of that grand opening, and I was able to tour the site. Most of the floors were classified, so we didn't really get the cool tour, but you could tell just from the outside that it looked like it was a pretty spectacular building. So I was honored to be able to be at that event. And then I also, the following day, attended the Dr. Charles Drew Blood Drive, which is kind of a community event, and I used my my status as a PDC commissioner to attend and to let people in the community know that it's really important that African Americans donate blood to the American Red Cross. So I was there to do so, and they took my picture, etc. I felt like a little local celebrity, but it was a really important cause. So just wanted to report those two events.
Great, thank you. Executive Director Quinton.
Thank you, Chair Andrews. Good morning, Commissioners. Given that I've been on vacation for most of the time since our last board meeting, I guess that don't really have much to report. I do have a few items that I failed to mention at the last meeting, so I'll just kind of run through those. A few weeks ago, we announced that we had made our annual announcement about our community livability grants, and we announced the award of almost $340,000 in grants under that program. The 9 of them were in the interstate URA, and 1 was in Lenz Town Center. They include a range of different projects. These are projects that are the applicants are usually community organizations or other community-based projects as opposed to business projects. They include universally accessible playground area at Arbor Lodge, a bicycle repair hub and skills track at New Columbia, a small orchard and perennial food forest in the Overlook neighborhood, and a historic building preservation in the Elliott neighborhood. In Lentz, our one award was for a workforce development center. And for the first time under this program, the grant applicants were required to make a good faith effort to contract with certified MWESB firms. So we expect that of the $340,000 that goes out in form of grants, that about $320,000 of that will flow to MWESB contractors. So it's a further alignment of our various program objectives. In addition to that, just want to talk about a few events that have happened. I think yesterday was that Commissioner Molis, who's not here today, but just want to mention that he attended and spoke at the ribbon cutting for the Portland Youth Builders event in Lentz. And Portland Youth Builders is one of our longtime organizations. They've received money under our Economic Opportunity Initiative, our EOI program. Very successful program, and he attended that. Another one of our EOI recipients, Central City Concern, had an event here last night. This room was packed last night with folks who had participated in their program, and the statistics for their program is pretty impressive. They have worked with almost 380 employers to put almost 750 formerly homeless people back to work. So they had a big celebration last night here to celebrate both the folks who participate in the program and receive jobs, but also all the employers, the companies and the other organizations that they work with are critical to the success of those programs. Once folks come out of training, to have a place to go to work is an important part of the program. And then a couple upcoming events. Tomorrow night I'll be talking on the Central East Side with Jonathan Malson from Beam Development and some representatives from the Central East Side Industrial Council, just to talk about the various activities that we have going on in the Central East Side, particularly around our entrepreneurship programs and the Produce Row brand that we've initiated. So it'll give us a chance to talk more, to get more visibility to that effort. And then next week, once again, we continue to host these delegations, like the group of mayors from China. We'll be hosting a delegation from the city of Copenhagen next week. Copenhagen is a city that we've long looked at as a model for us in terms of the various investments that we've tried to make in terms of the quality of life and livability here. So that'll be an interesting meeting. Plus, one of our most prominent companies here, Vestas, is a Danish-based company, so it'll be a nice tie-in there. With regard to any staff changes, I just I wanted to announce that Linda Andrews, who's one of our longest-serving employees here, is retiring at the end of the week. She's been with PDC for 13 years. She spent another 8 years with the city. And for much of the time at PDC, she's been in charge of we call it our professional services division, but it's really our procurement and contracting group. And she has run that operation in an incredibly professional and efficient way. And I think the statistics that we have in terms of the minority and women-owned business participation in our contracts. Linda and working with John Jackley have been primarily responsible for that work over the past 5 to 10 years. So Linda has, I think she's had a great career here at PDC and has a well-deserved retirement. So we wish Linda good luck in the future. And we also have identified Linda's successor. It's Dan Spiro, who's been working for Linda for, how long has Dan been working for Linda? About 5 years. Dan is one of the hardest working employees we have here at PDC. He manages a lot of the contracts that we have, and Dan's also spearheaded our green team, which leads all of the sustainability efforts here at PDC. So a great opportunity for Dan to step up from a staff role to a managerial role. So we're looking forward to that. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Well, and I want to congratulate Linda Andrews as well, and point out once again that it's not the Linda Andrews that I'm married to. And so that confusion will now end, I guess. If I could only get Andrew Scott to retire from OMF, the mayor's office would stop calling me and asking me budget questions, and I'd really be in the clear.
I think Andrew has a few more years in his career.
Yeah, I do too. I was watching the news last night, and KGW actually had a piece on the Central City Concern event here, and it was packed.
Yeah.
And they did a very nice little interview of Ed. So they got terrific publicity. And I also forgot to thank Charles for chairing our last meeting. You did a great job. I noticed that you took the seat as far as you could get from the chair's position.
No, they made me sit there. I told them it was a revered spot. I don't know if I was worthy to sit there, but I pulled it off. So
yes, you did. Thank you so much.
We know you were off working hard somewhere doing something.
I was listening. I was part of the meeting.
Poolside, right?
Not quite.
Okay.
It was 105. I was in the air-conditioned space. Okay. Next we have the meeting minutes for June 13th, 2012. There were a couple of minor changes made to page 8. You have the revised minutes in front of you. I would look for a motion to approve.
And so moved.
Second.
Any further changes or additions? And then all those in favor of accepting them, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next we have our opportunity for testimony for topics not on the agenda, and today we have Lee Perlman, who's asked to testify. Lee is a faithful attendee and a familiar face in the audience. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you, sir. Lee Perlman, 512 Northeast Brzee Street. I am not authorized to speak for them, but I am active in the Elliott Neighborhood Association. And this comes under the heading of what the French call the wisdom of the staircase, the things you realize you should have said when it's too late. Has to do with something was on your agenda at your last session, the North-Northeast Quadrant Study, and specifically its transportation program for the North of Broadway area. Now, my notes say that Mr. Joe Zender from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability said that there was consensus among the stakeholders committee. If he had said we had the votes and we put it over, there would be no argument, but consensus connotes agreement, and they knew they didn't have that. There were 3 dissenting votes, including the Elliott and Irvington associations. I'd like to share with you the position of the Elliott Association as shown by our land use chair and delegate Mike Warwick. Just 2 comments. First of all, in the terms of the transportation section of it, Elliott is asked to assume a role that it's all too familiar with, which is a sacrifice for the supposed greater public good in terms of traffic impacts. A larger question is the wisdom of the freeway widening project, which, for whatever good it will do, will have very large disruptive impact on an area you're trying to redevelop, and people have just invested $150 million on a streetcar intended to do that. The saving grace as far as Elliott and the dissenters is concerned is what we see as the unlikelihood that this will ever happen, given a price tag of $250 to $400 million. Also, Mr. Paul Smith commented that there was a briefing before the Planning Commission, and he saw heads nodding. I was busy taking notes, so he could have seen something I didn't, but I was listening, and there were comments by another Mr. Smith, Mr. Chris Smith. First of all, he was aware, as you are now, of Elliott's dissent. He said he was not fond of funding highway projects. He doubted, as we did, their ability to get the money for this. And he commented that if somehow they did, given the backlog of transportation needs throughout the city, he really couldn't see spending it all on this project. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you for your input and testimony. So noted. Next item is the consent agenda. There is one item. It's an action item. It authorizes a contract with the City of Portland in the amount of $2.1 million for the purpose of operating and administrating the EOI program during fiscal 2012 and 13. Resolution 6954. I'd look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So we have a time certain item, and we are 15 minutes ahead of time, so I guess we will adjourn the PDC regular board meeting, but we will not convene the TSCC meeting until 8:35. Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. It's a big day for us. This is a complicated process, as you can well imagine. 7 months worth of work by an awful lot of people. And we end it today, hopefully, by approving a budget and hopefully satisfying you that we've done the right job. So with that, thank you all very much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, I'm going to open the hearing. I'm going to read a little script I have because I haven't memorized it yet. This is a public hearing of the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission for the purpose of discussing the 2012-13 approved budget for the Portland Development Commission. One of TSCC's responsibilities, as detailed in state law, is to review the budgets of all municipal corporations under the Commission's jurisdiction. TSCC staff has carefully reviewed the budget and worked with the PDC staff on technical aspects of the budget. We have questions concerning the financial policies implicit in the budget that we would like to have answered that a typical citizen might ask. In that sense, we are here today representing all of those citizens that might not be able to ask questions of you directly. Of course, we encourage citizens to attend these public hearings and learn more about the district's budget and make any comments that are appropriate. Minutes of this public hearing will be prepared and retained as a permanent record of the proceedings. We do have a sign-up sheet in the back, and we will ask the public if they have any questions or comments towards the end of the hearing. With that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Javier Fernandez. I am the chair for the Commission, and I have no conflict of interest as we enter into this hearing. I would like the rest of my commissioners to introduce themselves.
Susan Schneider, Commissioner, and I have no conflict.
Attorney McCall, Commissioner, no conflict of interest.
Roselm Sutherland, Commissioner, no conflicts.
And our staff.
Colin Ayers, Executive Director.
Tony Betchart, Budget Analyst.
Great. Would the Commission like to introduce themselves and make any introductory remarks before we start with our questions?
Sure. I'm Scott Andrews. I am chairman and was elected to my 4th term a month ago, so you'll have to deal with me for another year. I just want to thank everybody for the hard work that it took to get us here today. There's an awful lot of people to thank. Tony Barnes, our budget officer, who really puts in most of the work, but certainly the finance staff, our executive staff. Patrick puts a lot of time and effort into this. Our urban renewal district advisors, the citizens that come and testify, city council who acts as our budget committee, and then certainly your participation today. Commissioner Dixon?
I am Commissioner Dixon, Anushka Dixon. Thank you all for being here this morning and for your service as well on your board. This is my second TSCC hearing, so I've been on the board almost 2 years now and been through this process for the second time. And again, it is a very extensive process, and we would not be able to do it without all the wonderful staff that is involved, Tony and the financial staff and Everett Patrick and all the leadership at this organization. This is actually a really exciting day for us, even though it can seem a little drab. It is quite a dynamic process. So thank you again for being here.
Yes, and I'm Commissioner Charles Wilhoit. This is my 7th. I think I'm entering my 7th year with the Portland Development Commission. And as Chair Andrews and Commissioner Dixon have expressed, I appreciate your participation. At this point, we work for you, and we appreciate the review we get of our budget. You've already heard about the process itself, and it is a very detailed process. And as several of you have gone through this with me over the last several years, you know that PDC has changed quite a bit. And through the review of all of your efforts, we get a much better budget because we hear questions and we are asked about perspective, and it helps us focus more on the year ahead once the budget is approved. So thank you very much for your time and your effort and your direction over us and the process.
I'm Patrick Quinton. I'm the Executive Director of PDC. This is my second TSCC hearing as Executive Director, and I just want to reiterate, I want to acknowledge all the great staff work that goes into our annual budget process. It is a great team that has a lot more experience than I do on this stuff, so I truly appreciate all the work. I also appreciate the leadership of our board in setting our budget priorities and in helping us manage through, I think we'll talk about this, a period for the foreseeable future of declining resources, and having clear direction from our board is very critical to that, being able to make these very difficult choices. We do, given our declining resources, we take the budgeting process incredibly serious, and not only in setting the budget, but also in managing to our budgets. And as you'll hear, we put in system changes and other things as well to allow us to manage the budget even better than we have in the past, because every dollar that we have to spend right now is incredibly vital, and we want to generate the most impact for the city of Portland from those dollars. So I just kind of want to reiterate that we do take this very seriously, both in the budgeting process and also throughout the year. Thanks.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate that, and I think that's clearly reflected in the quality of your budget, and we're very pleased to have reviewed it. And with that, we have a set of questions. Commissioner McCall, would you like to start?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is my fifth year with the TSCC, and so I certainly recognize and appreciate you. And you've complimented your staff, and that's always good to hear, and I would certainly want to pass similar compliments on to the very limited staff. TSCC has about 2.5 FTE. Two of them are here, Tom, the Executive Director, and Toonie. And sometimes we get told after meetings what great questions have been posed, and I want you to know that the Commission does not really necessarily write those questions. The staff does, and we sort of tweak them a little bit. But I really give Tom and Toonie and Shannon, who's not here, a lot of credit for working with a very finite resource to do really good work. So we tend to get the credit for it, but the truth is the staff is really the muscle behind the organization. So
would you please stop?
Okay. Okay. Actually, I should not have said those things because Tom may be using those in his performance review. So anyway, thanks to our staff. This year's budget is the first in many years that does not include either a reorganization, a change in how the budget is structured, and/or staff reductions. That's got to feel good. Is there a sense that you've come through a storm and are now operating in a relatively calm environment?
Maybe we're in the middle of the storm, I'm not sure. But this year's budget, aside from reconfiguration, a chart of accounts that includes better definitions for our business lines and some enhanced budget detail, there really are only incremental changes from last year's budget. In addition, the priorities are pretty much the same as they have been for the last 3 years. But the incremental changes will only last for the next 2 fiscal years, given the districts that have expired and we're winding up, and the districts that are about to expire, our revenue forecasts fall off quite significantly, especially as you get out 7 or 8 years. And I know you've got other questions coming, so I'll leave it at that.
Will anticipated future debt proceeds backed by tax increment financing revenues sustain your current staffing and other fixed costs over the next 5 to 10 years, or do you anticipate further downsizing as more planned? Well, you sort of answered a lot of that question already, but as more planned areas expire or simply don't increase in value due to the slow economic recovery. So you really addressed that point, but would you like to add any specificity to that?
Well, yeah, I think we're actually, the forecast includes a reduction of 30% in operations between fiscal year 2014 and 2015 and 2016 and 17. We are already researching resource development alternatives with the goal of becoming much less dependent on TIF and becoming more focused on becoming a self-sustaining organization, looking for fees for service, asset management, revolving loan funds, and other enterprise activities. So we're going to have to change, but we've we have the time to figure it out and get the support of City Council that would be necessary to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The Executive Director's budget message states that the agency adopted a revised mission statement this past January. What process did you go through to develop the final wording of the statement, and how is the current mission statement different from the previous one?
Thanks, Harry. As I discussed in my opening comments, and as you are aware, PDC has gone through significant change over the past 4 or 5 years, and part of that significant change was the creation of the Portland Housing Bureau. Formerly PDC conducted direct housing activities, but with the creation of the Housing Bureau, we do not participate directly in housing activity, though we work in conjunction and coordination with the Housing Bureau. With that creation of the Housing Bureau and the adoption of the economic development strategy by the City of Portland, we are focused much more on economic development, and that's really the key impact with regard to our change in operations. In order to align our new official mission with our changing mandate to provide a clear expression of this focus on economic development activity, PDC leadership created a team to focus on the change that was in front of us. So really we pulled together all key elements of the organization to focus directly on an economic development strategy. And this team revised the options and worked with leadership to develop a final economic development plan. So we have really shifted towards job creation, and with the economic crisis that we are facing in the country and in the city, and looking at the City of Portland's economic development strategy, our focus has gone in that direction. And that's what's reflected in our mission statement and our operating objectives now.
Thank you. My last question, a good share of the city's general fund allocation is for Economic Opportunities Initiative, which provides assistance to low-income residents. Can you provide more details about this program as it applies to the PDC, what services it provides and who is eligible, and what outcomes are expected?
Hi, I'll answer that question. This program, the Economic Opportunity Initiative, was actually established in 2004. And it supports our implementation of the Neighborhood Economic Development Strategy and our 10-year plan to end homelessness in the city. So these programs provide workforce training, micro-enterprise development, and other support services through contracts with nonprofit providers and individuals that are at between 0 and 80% median family income, depending on which program they're utilizing. Individuals enrolled in the EOI receive services for up to 3 years in order to increase their personal income and their skill development. And the program participants often face barriers to employment and business development, such as limited English proficiency, criminal histories, homelessness, and drug and alcohol addiction. So it's a really important program for our communities that face these barriers. And individualized plans to address education, training, job, or life skill needs are developed for each participant. In the fiscal year 2012-2013, the EOI anticipates serving approximately 1,080 multi-barriered individuals with workforce development services and 330 businesses with micro-enterprise support. 55% of the enrollees are anticipated to graduate after 3 years with a minimum of 25% increase in income or revenues. And approximately 52% of the participants currently enrolled in the EOI are minorities, and another 15% are non-native speakers. So it's a really important program that we continue to follow.
Thank you. Having said that, then how do you feel the goal for ending homelessness within that period of time you mentioned? What's your confidence level that will happen?
Well, we have the 10-year plan. I feel like it's a really complicated process, but I mean, we're definitely, a lot of the focus of the projects that we're doing are exactly geared towards that mission and that goal. So I hope that it would be within that time period, but it's really hard to say, and I don't know where we are in terms of when we started with the 10-year plan.
Very good.
But I think we have at least a good 5 or so years.
Certainly an admirable goal. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Commissioner Schneider.
When we met last year, the housing set-aside policy was under review. Have there been any significant, by the City Council, have there been any significant changes?
Yes, I'll take that question. The Commission and City Council adopted an updated set-aside policy last fall, which calls for at least 30% of TIF proceeds to be invested in affordable housing across most urban renewal areas. Several of the older urban renewal areas remain under 30%, and the new NPI districts are excluded from the policy. The adopted administrative rules also included an updated methodology for calculating the set-aside percentage going forward. The future allocations will be based on percent of total TIF debt proceeds, excuse me, and this is after taking out 4% for debt and financial administration, instead of percent of total TIF-related capital expenditures. So that was a little change in the policy. The difference is primarily that staff and other operating expenses that are paid for using TIF debt proceeds will now be part of the 30%. Whereas before they were not included. So there is some administrative cost included within the 30% set aside. Overall, the changes in methodology announced amounted to less than a 1% change in the total TIF resources split between PDC and the Portland Housing Bureau. So there were administrative and mechanical changes allowing for some cost to be included in the TIF calculation or the TIF set aside.
What were the exceptions you cited?
When we look at the change, we're looking at the fact that staff and other operating expenses that are paid for using TIF debt proceeds will now be a part of the 30%.
Oh, it's not certain areas are exempt from it.
It's just how we manage the money administratively.
Yeah, I might point out the TIF set-aside policy was 5 years old, and part of the City Council adopting it, the resolution called for a review at the end of the 5-year period. Mm-hmm. And the biggest change really is we went from a funding model that provided that they got 30% of what we spent annually, which was very difficult for them to plan on because a lot of times we'll have programs, or not programs, right, but certainly projects that get moved from one year to other, to a 30% of revenue sort of plan. Okay. But in order for that to work, because there's some money that has to go towards running right, PDC, collecting the bonds, those sorts of things, we had to make a little bit of a change in terms of how that was calculated. And I'll also say that the discussions and negotiations with the Housing Bureau and Commissioner Fish at the city level was terrific. I mean, there was certainly potential for conflict there, and there never was. We had a great conversation, and I think that the result was a real win-win.
I just want to add, I think, and Commissioner Wilhoit's answer, he did mention that we created 6 new neighborhood, we call them neighborhood prosperity initiative districts. They're right, very small urban renewal areas. I think there's a question later on about them, but they are excluded from the policy primarily because they're so small. Oh, the dollar amounts are so small that we just said, we don't need to worry about, because it would be a small amount of money, an even smaller amount of money that would flow to the Housing Bureau, and they wouldn't be able to use it. And everybody agreed with the objectives of those districts, so we've left them out. Okay. There's some older districts that have a little different goal, but basically 30% is the citywide goal for the existing urban renewal areas. So, yeah.
Well, and I think you sort of addressed the next question, which is how has this very significant change in terms of moving staff and that changed your day-to-day approach and work? If you want to add to that, feel free. I feel like you've talked about it. But
yeah, there have been some noticeable disparate changes within the agency as a result of the creation of the Portland Housing Bureau. Staff charged with delivering housing projects that were formerly housed at PDC now are housed at the Housing Bureau, along with those resources. So that's been a significant change for PDC and is reflected in our total staffing numbers. The agency-wide focus on job creation, however, has not changed dramatically. So we remain a development agency focused on increasing economic activity in the city of Portland, and the work of our business and industry division continues along those lines. Finally, the level of collaboration on projects and programs between the business and industry division and the central city and neighborhood divisions has substantially increased. So we're really trying to coordinate all of the activity. Patrick just mentioned the NPI district, smaller neighborhood areas, but generally we're trying to coordinate activities so that they push everything towards economic development and job creation. But we will, of course, be required and want to work in coordination with the Housing Bureau so that all the projects are developed with that overall economic advancement objective in mind. Together, staff work to support employment and business growth within what might have formerly been traditional development and infrastructure projects and/or tools. So once again, the focus is coordinated activity towards economic development. For example, staff continues to work with developers on commercial redevelopment loans, but now could use that tool to facilitate development that supports a software cluster business tenant. So we're trying to coordinate all the activity. We have 4 business clusters that we're really focusing on. So when a development project comes up, there could be a housing component that we would then work with housing to make sure we maximize the investment of PDC funding.
And we've talked a little bit already about the new areas, and we'll certainly talk more about that next year. But for now, I guess the question is, when the new Portland State area was created, the Sustainability Center wasn't included on that. What was the thinking about that?
I'll take this one. I spent a lot of time working on the Sustainability Center. Drove to Southern Oregon several times. But the Sustainability Center was inside the existing South Park Blocks district, which is beyond the date for issuing new debt, but still has several $1 million available for use. And the Sustainability Center there was long a budget item associated with the Sustainability Center within that district. So there were sufficient funds to do it within the existing district. And in addition, Commissioner Dan Saltzman requested that it be left out of the new district. He wanted to make sure that the new district wasn't going to be burdened by anything that came out of this particular project.
None of the new Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative urban renewal areas have an end date, expiration date. Why?
I'll answer this question as well. The Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative districts will only use the ADJOURN debt equal to the amount of the annual tax receipts to make investments, as opposed to issuing long-term debt that's paid over time by annual tax receipts. So using this approach, districts will automatically expire when maximum indebtedness is reached, and there will be no long-term debt to repay once the maximum indebtedness is reached. So it's uniquely different than the other districts that we've had. At this point in time, property taxes will flow back to overlapping tax jurisdictions, and it's forecasted to be about a 9-year process. And this financial arrangement was done in partnership with Multnomah County and with the City of Portland.
I have a follow-up question. So is this a legal restriction embedded in the nature of these districts, where you're legally saying we will not incur in any long-term debt and we'll just do the ADJOURN debt, or is this something that could be administratively changed in the future?
No, it was part of the approved district financial the responsibility. I think City Council could change that, but you're talking about in each one of these districts, as they get to mature, in $150,000 a year. So the idea, they're small districts, they're small business and retail areas. The grants are expected to be smaller. It's a completely different animal. It's a new way. It's actually a new way for us to think about helping neighborhoods out versus the bigger district sort of idea.
That was very refreshing to see these new ideas.
Yeah. The city and PDC are going through a process called Future Urban Renewal and reviewing urban renewal areas to determine what changes, if any, need to be made in terms of boundaries and a maximum amount of debt allowed and expiration dates. And so far the decisions have been made on 7, leaving the Central East Side, Gateway Regional Center, North Macadam, Willamette Industrial Center to be reviewed. What's the time frame? And I would add, how does having essentially a new city council starting next year fit into all that?
Well, I'll answer that in a couple of parts. First of all, I'm sure staff is very pleased to hear, and the public is probably pleased to hear that what you describe as the future of urban renewal process has been completed. and it was a very specific focus and a look at our urban renewal areas, given where each of them stood as far as their expiration and when we could issue debt. But as a result of that future of urban renewal process, we reviewed, amended, and created several urban renewal areas. When we look at that list, we see that the Central East Side was amended in 2005. The Lentz Town Center River District was amended in 2008. Downtown Waterfront South Park blocks were reviewed in 2008. So we systematically looked at urban renewal areas over a period of time and made amendments extending some of those areas and making changes that we thought were in the best interest of the city of Portland going forward. Continuing down the list, Airport Way was amended in 2009. Interstate Corridor, Oregon Convention Center, those two were amended in 2011. We had the 6 Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative URAs created in 2012. And then lastly, as you discussed a little earlier, the new Education URA was created in 2012. So we have a very comprehensive review of our urban renewal areas over the last 7 years with the creation of the NPI urban renewal areas in 2012 and the creation of the Education urban renewal area in 2012. So as you can see, we've been very busy, had a lot of public involvement, a lot of internal thinking and strategy, and a lot of coordination with the City Council. So we feel very good about where we sit as far as looking at our urban renewal areas going forward. And as Chair Andrews indicated a little earlier, very specific focus on how we're going to fund, and continue to fund the what we believe are much needed activities of the Portland Development Commission going forward.
Great, well, thank you. Let's go to some specific questions on some of the area projects that you have going on. We noted that the largest single amount budgeted for next year is a $22 million line item for renovations to the Veterans Memorial Coliseum within the Convention Center, URA. Is PDC involved in the decision of what those renovations will be, or are those decisions made by the City Council?
I'll take this one. As
you
I've
sure you want to take that?
Taken a personal interest and spent a lot of time working on this project. I think it's very, very important. The scope of the project has actually been a joint effort of all of the folks at the table. PDC, the city, really represented by OMF, who's responsible for it. The private partners, the Winterhawks, who are still want to make a $10 million investment, as well as Portland Arena Management, who's the building operator and provider of the construction services, which they are going to provide at no cost. So we have been quite involved in the scoping decision-making process.
Thank you. Now a project that is near and dear to my heart. In my former professional life, many years ago, I at some point spent a ton of hours studying the Convention Center hotel and the economic analysis. So this is...
And everybody else.
Yeah, it's not going away. So along with this same URA in the Convention Center, there's a $4 million line item for a Convention Center headquarters hotel. Assuming the project moves ahead with a private developer, what would the $4 million would be used for?
I'll take this one as well, and I might take just a minute to editorialize a little bit, because I had the opportunity to sit in front of the Oregonian editorial board this week with Tom Hughes at Metro and Harold Pollan from the industry, from the hotel industry. And when the convention center was initially conceived, a hotel was supposed to be part of phase 1. And they couldn't accomplish it, and so it was supposed to be phase 2. And here we are decades later without a convention center hotel. When the model for the success of the convention center was based even originally on having one. Metro is leading this effort, which makes a lot of sense. We have participated with them, work closely with them in terms of creating the RFP, which is out at this point. Response is due the 11th of July. But frankly, there really is no target in terms of where that $4 million might go. We expect that there will be a gap somehow, but we want to take a look at what proposals come in and who's making them and what the gap looks like. And We have not agreed to give away land for this. We've made the land available, but would at this point expect to get fair market value for it. We're fully supportive of it going forward. I think it's really, really important, but don't really have I can't tell you that it's going to go for a parking garage or a ballroom or any specific thing.
For planning or architectural fees?
Not at this point.
We have two follow-ups.
I just wondered are you getting much interest in the RFP?
Well, the Metro is running it. Tom told me he expected 5 or 6 serious responses.
In all the years that this has been going on, is this the first RFP that's been put out?
No, I think there have been a couple in the past, but the thought is, quite frankly, the industry has turned around. We're seeing some hotels. There's a new one that we're supporting that's going up in the Pearl, and another one that is in the South Auditorium District, I think, or River Place, that's interested in going up. So the industry has turned around. Interest rates have fallen dramatically from the last time we looked at this, and construction prices have fallen dramatically. So
so the timing is
seems
good.
like it's a really good time to look at it.
Thank you.
Great. Changing districts slightly, the new park in the River District area is budgeted to receive $4.1 million next year. Can you tell us a little bit about this newest Pearl District Park and when it might open?
Yes, I'll take that question as well. The Fields Park is the 3rd Pearl District Park, and the people in the Pearl District are ecstatic about it. They have been waiting for this park, and it is a huge priority for the district. As per the design concept of Peter Walker, landscape architect, the park is a little over 3 acres, and it will incorporate a large grassy open field, a separate children play area, and a fenced urban off-leash dog park. The park should be officially open by the spring of 2013. So I was able to actually attend our groundbreaking. It's ready to go, and the community is very excited for this project to take place.
Great, great. Well, speaking of animals in the River District's area, there's a $1.75 million line item to relocate the Mountain Police Horse Barn. Can you tell us a little bit more about where it's being relocated to, and if this is an indication that progress is being made to redevelop the Centennial Mills property?
The inclusion of this budget item reflects potential progress based on the expressed interest of 2 respondent development teams to the redevelopment opportunity at Centennial Mills. Staff anticipates bringing a developer team to our board by July of this year. So that will be interesting to hear what we're intending to do. We're going to enter into negotiations for an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, which should lead to a disposition and development agreement. One of the locations that's being explored for the relocation of the MPU is underneath the Broadway Bridge, and it's currently owned by PDC property.
Great. Commissioner Sutherland.
The Central East, I can't borrow your mic here. The Central East Side URA is getting close to issuing its maximum amount of debt. Is there a sense of urgency to move forward with the Burnside Bridgehead project? And you might have to do some descriptions there.
Okay. Well, similar to the discussion about the Convention Center Hotel, the Burnside Bridgehead project has been on the burner for quite a while. And that project is moving forward right now with the redevelopment of the Convention Plaza building, and that's anticipated to close in July of this year. We're also in early stage negotiations on DDAs with regard to Block 67 and a portion of Block 75. So all 3 of these projects are being sold at market rates with little, if any, expected subsidy from PDC. So we are moving forward with Burnside Bridgehead development in the form of the Convention Plaza building. And then there are 2 other projects that are under consideration. And, of course, the public has been very involved with regard to what goes on at the Burnside Bridgehead, and we have strategically looked at that opportunity over the years, have considered different projects on that property, and we are moving forward with one project in earnest now, and 2 others are under consideration.
We understand that the Uwajimaya Asian grocery store has decided not to develop a store in downtown Waterfront. Yet there's $5.5 million budgeted in the 12-13 budget to develop Block 33. Are there any specific plans for the money, and if so, what are they?
I'll take that one. We were disappointed when Uwajimaya came to that conclusion, and
not
frankly,
as much as I was.
it had an awful lot.
It's a long way out there to Beaverton.
Yes, it is. I mean, my understanding of it, because I was involved in this a little bit as well, is it really had to do more with how their company is doing with their last expansion than this particular site. It's a fairly small family-owned organization. So, but nonetheless,
unique.
Unique. Nonetheless, we believe that block is really a keystone to the development of this district. So we actually gave the new development team to the end of this month, and they created a new concept and pro forma, and they're actually talking to some major tenants. If that doesn't happen and it expires at the end of this month, or if there isn't very serious interest by some major credible tenants, then we will probably take a look at splitting that $5.5 million up into smaller pots of money and try to bring other businesses into the district.
The North Macadam URA's budget included $12.6 million for the completion of a veterans low-income housing. How many units will there be, and will they be reserved? Will all of them be reserved for veterans?
Yes, there are going to be 208 units, and 42 of those units will be reserved for veterans.
Isn't it nice when the answers are easy?
Yes, it is.
Will there be space allocated for providing social services to the veterans?
And this is the easiest answer, yes.
Don't you love it when we end on a yes?
Who will be the provider of those services? Will it be the city or Department of Veterans Affairs?
I'm not.
I couldn't let you that.
Well, PHP, so it's a PHP project, and I think that I don't know the exact, we can get you to the answer, but I think it'll be an outsourced provider. I don't know if we know. Is somebody?
We can get you the answer.
We'll get you next year.
Do we know the answer? Reach will be the providers. Okay, thank you.
What did you say?
Reach.
Nonprofit agency.
Great. Do we have any more questions from the Commission?
No, but I need to say goodbye because this is my last year on the TSCC. 7 years.
Oh, I heard that rumor. We already started our writing campaign.
We started together.
You're not really leaving. You don't know about it yet.
But I've learned a great deal about Portland as a result of serving on TSCC and particularly coming to these meetings. So I just want to thank you for my good experience.
Thank you. Well, we've appreciated dealing with you, and I know Commissioner Kolas was joking when she said it could be a little drab. It's not drab because we got to visit with you, and Terry, I think you're continuing on, so you've been here a number of years, and Commissioner Snyder as well. So, and Commissioner Fernandez is fairly new. I think last year was your first year on?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. So we look forward to seeing you all again next year. So thanks for your support and your insightful questions.
Great. Thank you. And are there any comments from the public? I don't think there are any, but we have to confirm. None? Okay. Well, I want to thank the PDC for hosting us and for breaking your meeting to allow for this hearing. At this point, I'm going to close the hearing, but don't go away because we are now opening our regular TSCC meeting to discuss the certification of PDC's budget. I would like to ask our Executive Director if you have any comments on the budget. And are there any recommendations or objections to the PDC budget?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is one recommendation noting an overexpenditure in the 2010-11 year, minor amount despite Tony and Faye's best efforts, probably something that came in middle of July or something. So it's our typical recommendation to track expenditures more closely to make sure appropriation authority is in place before expenses are paid. With a big budget like this, it's not uncommon. Other than that, the budget was great. I would echo Commissioners and Patrick's comments about the budget staff. Tony and his staff are great to work with, and it's always one of the funner budgets for me to work with. But it is a little challenging when they change the chart of accounts. But no, the budget looked great. There's a couple of minor things that staff assured me would be corrected in the adopted budget, but other than that, it was another great budget to review.
Great. And again, as is always my practice, the recommendation would be then that to pay closer attention to over expenditures on all of the funds. As noted here, there was an over expenditure in 2010-11 in the other federal grants funds, business and industry, of $23,304, which, as you noted, is while a violation, it's definitely not a big one considering the size and the complexity of this budget. So, great. Do we have any further discussion? Great. Well, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Well, thank you very much. And we're not closing our meeting. We're just going to continue conducting our meeting outside. We have a couple of administrative issues to complete, but we'll get out of your way so that you can continue your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we will reconvene the PDC board meeting. Commissioner Molis will be, are we calling him or is he calling us? We're calling him. Why don't we just take a 5-minute break here and We are officially reconvened as the PDC board. We are on. Good morning, Commissioner Mullis.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, I'm sorry I couldn't join you earlier. I had an 8 o'clock meeting here that I had to attend. So
you missed the very exciting Tax Supervision and Conservation Committee hearing.
And I regret that I did.
All right. First item is an action item adopting the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget resolution 6955. Tony Barnes, Budget Officer.
Good morning, Chair Andrews, Commissioners, Executive Director Quinton, Tony Barnes, Budget Officer, and today presenting the action to formally adopt PDC's 1213 recommended budget and appropriate resources. That will be effective July 1st, 2012. What I'm going to do is walk over a very, very quick presentation of the final recommended adopted budget and talk about some of the changes staff have recommended to include in the appropriations for the resolution. The proposed adopted budget is a total of $168 million. These resources are spread between property redevelopment, making up 35% of the budget, administration 10%, business development at 14%, infrastructure at 16%, and housing at 25%. And again, as we've discussed in the prior meetings, the housing dollars are less than 30% due to progress on housing, progress on the set-aside in the last couple of years, as well as the fact that the PDC budget includes more than just the resources subject to the set-aside, the TIF resources. The total budget from the last one we looked at increases a total of $7 million, but really that's an increase of $933,000 in total expenditures. As you can see from this the chart, the recommended changes decrease administration by about $300,000. That's offset by an increase in business development of $300,000, and that's mainly reallocating staff and some other charges that were previously classified as administration towards the business line, the appropriate business line, business development. And it's mainly related to general fund programs. And the only other change is increasing housing by $865,000. That's a net total. There are some decreases and increases across different URAs, and that's represented by truing up to the PHB budget based on some carryover projects. So that the IGA item that we'll be looking at in a few minutes, as well as the PHB budget and the PDC budget, will be in alignment. Outside of expenditures, our transfers are decreasing $175,000. So that represents our overhead allocation. So it's a small decrease in the overhead allocation. And contingencies going up about $6.2 million based on our updated estimates on some year-end balances. So we're kind of truing up where we think we're going to be on July 1 a little ahead of time here. So as I discussed some of the changes that we have, three main changes, the reallocation, the business development activities based on some fine-tuning in the staff allocations.
So is this, just quickly, the software that we implemented last year that provides for kind of allocating this stuff? I know it takes a while. You implement it, but it takes a while for staff to get used to getting it done. This is kind of part of that process, and you might, where are we in terms of really fully getting that up and running?
Well, we've had really good reports in place for the last 5 or 6 months. So staff have begun reviewing those reports on a regular basis, analyzing where we are as far as direct charging to projects and programs. We went through a pretty intensive process in March, and since then to take a harder look at those different project codes and project budgets and make some adjustments to make sure we're in the best place possible based on what we know right now for establishing budgets in those different business lines and projects. So we're getting to a point where we're setting up that budget so that we can start the next full year using the software, using the reports, and align the budget versus actuals. And we'll be reporting on a regular basis. We're going to be doing a lot of staff training in the next month as well to really to implement the process.
Great, thank you.
So next year, and just to add, next year's budget, so not this budget, but the beginning of next budget cycle, we'll be able to build the budget up from project budgets, whereas in the past we've looked at the overall budget and then projects have been budgeted within that, so it wasn't driven bottom up from projects. And so the work that Tony mentioned we did in March was to create that project detail, but it still was done after the overall budget was proposed. Beginning next year, we'll be able to start with project budgets, build the overall organization budget up from that, and then we'll truly have the alignment that our systems have allowed us to do. So.
And the final two items are related to housing, that $860,000 that's being adjusted, so some project carryover. And there's also, we brought some dollars forward. There was the $500,000 in the Lentz budget we brought from future years into the 12-13 budget for the intergenerational housing project that supports the MOU between the city and Portland Public Schools. And that completes the recommended changes. I'd be happy to answer any questions and additional.
No, I just wanted to say that I did have an opportunity to discuss with Commissioner Strauss his suggestions that he made at the last meeting, and he's satisfied that actual budget changes don't need to be made, and his concerns have been addressed through actually working on the projects themselves. Anybody else?
No, I don't have any questions. Just a comment that, as always, very appreciative of the effort that goes into the budget process with Faye and Tony and everyone else involved, and also appreciative of the fact that when we receive it, even after several layers of review, we're still able to take hard looks at those items that the public has brought to our attention and other items that we think need to be incorporated, and still make some modifications that are meaningful to the public and to the communities we serve. So thanks for your efforts.
Very well said. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot John was here. I second that as well, and just really good work, Tony. And I know you had some changes this year, and we have a new CFO, and so just look forward to how everything will be laid out next year as well, and I'm sure so are you. So thank you.
Commissioner Mullis?
No, I just, as I said earlier, very well said what Commissioner Wilhoit said and now Commissioner Dixon. So, yeah, I appreciate all the good work that Tony and the rest of the staff that work on the budgets put in.
Okay, so I would look for a motion to approve the fiscal year 2012-13 budget, Resolution 6955.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, Tony. Start working on next year's.
I know. Start right now.
Here we go.
You got it.
Here we go. Next item is also an action item, authorizing fiscal year 2012-13 intergovernmental agreements with the Portland Housing Bureau, Resolution 6956, and guess who gets to give that one as well?
Thank you. So this action will authorize the executive director to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Portland Housing Bureau for two items, included in Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A is a resolution. To the resolution is the Housing Rehabilitation Finance and Development Agreement, which provides for PHB implementation of housing, urban renewal activities for the rehabilitation of housing and development of projects. So this agreement requires, as part of the reimbursement process, certification from PHB that the costs incurred are eligible for urban renewal expenditures, and so this is a monthly reimbursement process based on the projects being undertaken by the Housing Bureau. The total contract amount is just over $41 million, based on projects that are established in the budget for both the City of Portland, PHB, and the Portland Development Commission, and is subject to being amended through the year based on the flow of project timing. And the second item, Exhibit B to the resolution, is the Housing Support Services Agreement, which provides for PDC's delivery of services to PHB to support PHB's urban renewal and non-urban renewal housing activities. This includes property management services, information technology services, and construction and environmental services. So it's a reimbursement process where PDC is incurring expenses based on PHB's tasks, and we will invoice PHB on a monthly basis for those costs.
So just let me comment on the Exhibit B, the items on Exhibit B. As we transferred the Housing Bureau from PDC over to the Portland Housing Bureau, there is some expertise and some services that didn't go over, and it wasn't certain whether or not the Housing Bureau would actually create that expertise in-house. I think what they have found is that it's much more efficient to use a small part of our capacity. We've got experience in those particular projects and understand them, and it's really the most efficient and good for both PDC as well as the Housing Bureau. Commissioner Dixon, any?
I agree with that as well. Really, I had a chance to go over this in our briefing and just getting a better understanding that we have some of the knowledge that the Portland Housing Bureau is well aware of, and so that we're continuing to keep that work here at PDC, and it makes sense to me. So.
And I would agree with all of that. The question I have, is there any plan for continued migration so that the Housing Bureau does everything, or what's the down the road look?
I believe they're in the middle of or finishing up their loan system in the next year. So I believe this will be the last year of PDC hosting that software.
But we probably will be providing property management type services and some other
services,
consulting.
Related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Mullis?
No questions.
Okay. Well, then I would look for motion to approve the authorizing fiscal year 2012-13 intergovernmental agreements with the Portland Housing Bureau, Resolution 6956.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Tony. And last but not least, Tony is not going anywhere. Another action item, extending term of request to City Council to issue short-term subordinate urban renewal and redevelopment bonds, Resolution 6957.
And thank you again. This action amends Resolution number 6473, which was adopted by the Commission in June of 2007, to extend through the end of this fiscal year, the end of 11-12. The Commission's request to City Council to issue short-term subordinate urban renewal and redevelopment bonds to the end of this year. So all other provisions related to that original resolution will remain in effect. And this really is to facilitate the final issuance of the short-term de jure debt for this fiscal year, since that resolution was dated to end in the middle of June instead of the end of this fiscal year. So it's just to extend through June 30th. At that point, there'll be a new process to put new issuances in place.
That first amendment was for a 5-year period. We're only doing it through the end of this fiscal year.
There'll be another one for another probably 5-year period. This, frankly, was just a mistake when they did it. They should have done it through June 30 versus 5 years. They didn't, and this somebody wasn't thinking 5 years out.
This is a normal part of operation, so I would assume this is something that we will continue to approve on in 5-year blocks over time.
Right.
Commissioner Dixon. Commissioner Mullis?
Very good.
All right. Well, I would look for a motion to approve extending the term of request to City Council to issue short-term subordinate urban renewal and redevelopment bonds, Resolution 6957.
So moved.
I second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Well, very efficient today. Thank you very much. Before I adjourn, I will point out, I think you probably noticed that we only had 2 informational items on the calendar for our July 11th commission meeting. So enjoy the month of July off. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, August 15th. With that? Yes, sir.
Before you adjourn, and I apologize again for joining everyone late, but if I could have 2 minutes just to touch on a couple items since the last meeting.
Certainly.
the last meeting I missed, and my wife and I had the good fortune to spend 8 days in Boston and New England. And while we were there, I spent an hour with Jim Turney with the Boston Redevelopment Agency. And it was very interesting to spend some time with him and have him explain how Boston's urban renewal agency works. And there's a lot of differences in how the two agencies do business. There's some similarities. They're looking at some future financial shortcoming issues as we are. But anyway, it was time well spent and very interesting. And then yesterday I had the honor to represent the PDC at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Portland Youth Builders new outdoor facility. And the PDC, we gave them, I believe, a $27,000 grant to help fund that. And it's a very nice outside covered area now that they'll be able to frame up walls and build forms and do actual hands-on training for these young folks that are trying to prepare themselves for possible careers in the building and construction trades to do that kind of work out of the rain and out of the weather. And it was a very good ceremony. They were very appreciative of our involvement, and I think it's one of the neighborhood efforts that we can look at and take pride in. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Actually, Patrick and I had an opportunity to meet with the same people at the Boston Economic Development Agency when we were there, what was that, April? Yeah. It's always interesting to see how other people do their economic development and development.
Right.
Is there an economic development agency in Hawaii?
Yeah.
I met with the
That's where my trip's going to be.
I met with the head of the Maui Economic Development Agency a few weeks ago. She was in town. Yeah. I have to do a field trip.
I don't want to catch her in town. I want to catch her there.
I want to do a home and home. Okay. Thank you for helping us out today, John. We're adjourned.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
John.
care, John.
Okay. Thanks.